Hey. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. This is kind of Viveka von Rosen. Oh my goodness, with LinkedIn or Vengreso Live. I want to introduce to you I've been a fangirl. I don't know why I'm so blurry. I've been a fangirl of Ardath Albee for I think like 10 or 11 years. I was writing my first book and I reached out to my friend Rebel and said, I really need someone who's like an expert in buyer personas. Who would you recommend I talk to? And she said, oh, you have to, my great friend Ardath, I have to introduce you to my great friend Ardath. And so she did. And so Ardath and buyer personas is always the person I go to. Now, mind you, that was 10 years ago and you've expanded way beyond that. But let me give you a little intro to Ardath and then I'll actually let her speak for herself. So she's a B2B Marketing Strategist and the CEO of Marketing Interactions, where she creates personas and persona-driven content marketing and sales enablement strategies for her clients. So if you need help with your marketing and sales enablement and content for sales enablement and all that kind of good stuff, she is the one. She's written 2 books, Digital Relevance and E-Marketing Strategies for the Complex Sale. So also, if you are involved in complex sales, go talk to Ardath. And she's often found speaking at industry events, back when we had events, leading workshops, and is often on the list, usually on top of me, of top B2B experts to follow. She is also currently the interim VP of marketing at Modus. And you can find her on Twitter at Ardath421. And we're going to pop the link for Ardath for LinkedIn, so you can follow her there right now too. So, welcome, Ardath. I am so thrilled to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Viveka. I've been your fan for a long time too.
I love mutual fangirling. So make sure that you follow Ardath. Here's her link in the chat. We'll pop it in the stream as well. But today we're going to talk about, and you're an expert in this, creating B2B content for sales enablement strategies. So let's break that down a little bit. So I think we all know what B2B is, but the content for sales enablement strategies, like, can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, it's it's interesting. A lot of marketers spend all their time creating content for top of funnel, right?
Yeah.
So earlier stage content, which really should be designed to support a thought process, right? So your buyers are looking for, why should we change? What should we change? How do we change? What happens if we don't change? All that kind of stuff. But salespeople need content that supports conversations, right? So the whole purpose is to have content that they can use to open conversations, support conversations, extend them, etc., all those kinds of things. And so it kind of transitions from that story of what, why, and how to deeper dives into the challenges buyers are facing, and what are the outcomes that they could get? What's the business value? It's not so much about feeds and speeds. It's about, what are they going to get? What's in it for them? What changes for them? And then looking
so it almost goes from like a one-to-many to an almost one-to-one conversation.
So kind of, when you're planning your strategy, you have to narrow the story down so that it's specific enough that you can have conversations around it. And so if you think about conversations are kind of a series of Q&A, right? I say, Vic, how you doing? And you say, Ardath, I'm fine. What's new with you? Well, blah, blah, blah. What's new with you? So it's Q&A back and forth. So when you think about that from a content perspective, what content can you create that enables sales to have these discussions about what's possible, and then even further, when you're talking B2B for a complex sale, you've got that buying committee, that group of people.
Yes.
So how can you be the one who's providing ideas for how the IT person can talk to the finance person, or how the finance person talks to the business unit leader, or whatever, and sharing your ideas in those conversations, right? So you want to be the one that helps them facilitate, reaching consensus and all of those things. But there's also risks in every change management thing, which is what a buying process is. And so how do we help them mitigate those or think them through? And so I think one of the most interesting things lately is the research Gartner has done on buyers, and how they're overwhelmed by this amount of content, even more so
Yep.
now that we're all digital, right? And
Yeah,
they
exactly.
want to push sales to the side, do their own research and think about it, but they don't know what questions to ask, because think about how much tech has changed, right?
Right.
And mostly I work with, technology buyers quite often, or what have you, or at Modus, we sell to manufacturing, and
Yep.
they're not, usually in the front leading edge of,
You
change.
don't say.
And so, you have to think about how do you help them assimilate all this stuff. And what Gartner finds is not only are they overwhelmed, but they don't know what they don't know. So they
Right.
don't know what to ask. Even if they're out doing self-serve, we've got to help them understand what are the things they need to know. What questions should they be asking? How do they talk to each other about it? How do they evaluate these things? So, it's really interesting, but you want to be the company that provides the ideas that carry these conversations on in between all these different people within the company. Because
Yep.
when you look at the research, they're only going to spend 17% of their time with sales reps, and that's all sales reps, not your
Right.
sales rep.
Exactly.
So how do you get in more of those conversations and take up more of that small amount of time?
Yeah, 100%. And so you mentioned earlier change management, and can you unpack that a little bit? Like how is this process related to change management? And especially with what's going on with COVID, and then I'll let you answer this question. What more guidance can we give to our sellers? But I hear change management and I'm like, yeah, okay. But I realize myself like, okay, but how do those things play together?
Well, essentially, think about it this way. If you're going to buy a new system,
Yep.
or some institute something new, your processes are going to change.
Yeah.
People are going to be doing different things. People have to adopt it and learn how to use it, right? And a lot of people, especially if you're talking sales reps, they're used to doing stuff the way they do it. How do you
Yeah.
get them to change and adopt things? How easy can you make it? What happens if they don't adopt it? Oh my
Right.
God. What happens if you say, we can get this done and you can launch in 30 days, and it doesn't happen for 6 months? Then what?
Right.
What's the impact of that? So buyers are thinking about all these different things. And then you've got in a buying committee stuff that overlaps, right?
Yeah.
So one person is saying, wait a minute, if you change that, then I got to change my team, or
Exactly.
whatever. And so how do you help them work through all this stuff and understand, what do I have to do? How simple can you make it for them? And even more importantly, now what I'm hearing during this pandemic stuff going on is,
Yeah.
what's the time to value? How
Right.
fast can I get an impact? Give me something that gives me an impact here, but also show me the long-term value that I'm going to get over time. But I have to have something right here and right now, and so
Exactly.
how do we break it up in a way that shortens their time to value, and then allows them to grow into it, if you will, as they move forward? But it's not, people aren't doing right now, let me invest in the 3-year change plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. We need something right now. We might not be here in 3 years.
Yep. And so it's quite a different experience right now, and buyers are cautious. We're seeing people that are right at the tipping point in the pipeline, ready to go. They're not saying we don't want to buy you. What they're saying is, we're not sure we have the resource to implement right now, because we're changing so much other stuff, because our
Yeah.
buyers have changed. you know uh, so we have to make it simpler, but we also need to help them understand the value differential, right? So
Exactly.
what is, it has to be they're going to get enough so
Yeah.
that it's worth it for them to take this on, because all of us are doing more. I don't know about you, but I work more hours remotely than you would work in an office,
Yeah.
because it's very easy to just turn the corner in the hall and come in the office, and I'm just going to do one more thing, and 3 hours later,
Yeah.
so
Exactly. And it's interesting because I'm thinking about it from the seller side. Like our sellers need to learn how to do things differently. So you got your change management within your own company, but of course, whatever solution you're selling, then your client has to deal with that change management. So, I mean, it's a lot of change that's going on right now. So how do we support our sellers to help them through and get them the right content and support them in creating these conversations with their buyers?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I was like having a conversation with David Brock the other day. I don't know if you know him or not, but we were talking about the difference in sellers not being in person, right? You don't have those hallway conversations. You can't read the room. It's much different looking at the little Zoom boxes, all together and trying to read body language and those kinds of things. And I think Rain Group did a great study on virtual selling where, buyers they want sales reps to listen to them. They want to know they're listening to them.
Yes.
You can't take a presentation that you would do in person and slap it in a Zoom and think it's going to be as effective. And so we need to create content that, it's really about the conversation now. And so more of the onus is on marketing to help with these things and this information. So guidance really is, what can you share about buyers that sellers used to be able to suss out on their own when they were sitting in the room with their buyer,
and you had that body language thing going on.
And so how can we help them pinpoint things that are, triggers for engagement that really have buyers lean forward and pay attention? So I think it's, there's been this thing, all these studies have come out that say sellers only use 20% of your content, right? 80% of it sits unused, never touched, whatever. And from my perspective, what I look at is I think, well, because sellers don't have time to read it all. And even if they read it all, they don't quite understand what
it doesn't go in and
how do I use this?
Exactly.
And so in my last book, I created what I called Cliff Notes for Sales, this concept where, what you give them is, what question is this piece of content answering for your buyer, right? What is the main takeaway? If they read it, then what are they going to get? What's that takeaway that you can build upon, And then quickly, like think TLDR, too long didn't read part, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's like, okay.
I had to look that one up. I wasn't sure what that stood for the other day. Too long to read.
I know, exactly. But true. It's true. And so what's the premise of the content? What are the three main points? And then what questions could your seller ask to stimulate discussion about this topic? What are some key messages they could put in an email to talk about, the content that a buyer just engaged with to stimulate a conversation, get a call with them? What related content, if they engage with that, what's the next piece of the puzzle? So if we're creating our content properly, it builds a story. So if your buyer is engaged with X, where's X plus 1, X plus 2, X plus 3? How do you build that story? And we need to line it up so that sellers know what to do with it and what to use.
And what's interesting is McKinsey just a week or two ago shared a new article interviewing B2B buyers, and especially the millennials. They are not interested in going back to the way things were. They are, and I think Gartner did a similar report, or they did it together. But, our B2B buyers are like, we trade shows, conferences, on-site visits. We're not really interested in that. We like getting on Zoom, having the conversation. They might not even see the product or service in action before investing between $50,000 and $500,000. So our remote sellers, or our sellers, need to learn to become remote sellers. And I really like what you said earlier about, sellers need to learn to read the Zoom room, the leaning forward, and to your point, that means asking more questions and having more valuable content at hand, because we can't rely on the old ways of doing things.
Right. Well, what we're seeing too at Modus is that interactive content is making a big difference in facilitating some of that. So think 3D virtual product tours where you can, you sell to industrial clients. So think Caterpillar with a big excavator, and you can put a 3D product tour up where they can spin it around and they can drill into different points and look at what's underneath. They could even sit in the cab and see what the view looks like out the windows.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things like that can get people really engaged and talking about things, asking questions, wanting to explore further. So can assessments, where you work with your buyer on the screen, working on assessment to actually prove what kind of value exchange is there, what's
Yes.
possible. How do you determine the ROI, or the total cost of ownership, or those different things.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about getting more interactive too, and being comfortable with that in a virtual environment.
Yeah, I love that. I was talking to a prospect the other day, and they excuse me, they're a med tech company, but they're a holograph company, and so they are starting to rework their holographs, not just for medical equipment, but for meetings. So you and I can be talking to each other like this, and I can see you and you can see me, and I can see your whole body and you can see my whole body. And it's much more of a realistic, because even though I think I'm looking at you, until I look at the camera, I'm not actually looking at you. And if I'm looking at the camera, then I can't see you. So even that, when we have a sense that we're looking at each other eye to eye on Zoom, we're not. And so that, and the example you gave about the 3D, I mean, we're just going to have to figure out different ways of utilizing new technologies, I think, on top of everything else.
I know, but I want you to back up for a minute. You just said you could see all of me, which means I have to not wear
Wear pants.
pants anymore. Wait a minute. I just got used to this new thing.
That's a good point. But just think about it. Holographs might bring, fashion houses back in. Oh, but it's in holograph. So maybe we could do like artificial. I could have on my Armani suit, not my White House Black Market suit.
There we go. Yes. That would be never-ending wardrobe. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Oh, here's a good question from Mark. Yeah, let's answer this one. Can you see it there? Isn't creating this content marketing's job? Why is it on the sellers to come up with the content?
Oh, no, I never said it was on the sellers. I'm saying it's not only marketing's job to create the content, but to help sellers understand how to use that content to the best benefit for the buyer, right? How to use that content to engage in better conversations. So sales should not be creating content. They need to be having conversations. But and that's really the beauty of sales enablement platforms, is the fact that you can push your content instantly to your sales teams, no matter where they are, and they can always have access to the latest version, right, of whatever that is. So you never worry about like what happens in most cases where reps, once they find something in this archaeological dig, right, to discover content, they download it to their laptop and use it forever. And yet you're 3 versions later on the marketing side, and they're still using the one they downloaded to their laptop, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I often do a talk on content for sales enablement, and content marketing and regular marketing is kind of on the top half, and it's very much one to many. And then as you start to focus in on your buyer persona and individualize, it falls into the content for sales enablement, where you're really taking that content, like you said, that marketing is created, and serving it to your buyer through private messaging, through emails, through text, however you're engaging one-on-one with your buyer. But content marketing is kind of one to many. Content for sales enablement's really more, and I'm generalizing here, but it's really a little bit more one-on-one. But to your point, Ardath, yeah, you might have downloaded a white paper or a case study and you share it all the time, but it's 6 months old, 8 months old, 4 years old, and it's not the right information. So we need to find ways of getting the right content up to date and make it super easy for the buyer to go, my prospect had a question about, how to utilize this one feature. And so the buyer can then or the seller can just go in and go, okay, what content do we have about this one feature? And do we have any success stories that I can now share in a video, share in a, as a link? But we've got to be able to feed our feed our sellers the right information at the right time. And here's our friend, and I don't know, Ardath, if you know Adam Ligraldi, but this dude knows how to do content for sales enablement.
And he's right. He's right about the coordinated
Yeah.
effort, and
Yeah.
it goes to the best way to get ideas, about what you're doing. You've got to talk to people. Marketers tend to, I think, oftentimes a lot of the marketers that I start working with create content in a vacuum, what they think they should be creating. And it's interesting. Modus has just done a research study, and I just got the data this week, and I've been looking at it. And when you look at, one of the questions we asked was, what informs the content that you produce?
Yeah.
And marketing strategy is down the list, so why the heck are we creating it if we're not using it? But personas were at the bottom of the list.
Oh,
And
geez.
so what's informing is like what the managers, or what your managers or leaders say, we need content for this. That's top, right? And then it was, what sales asked for,
Right.
which should be in your marketing strategy if you're talking
Yeah.
to them, right? So it's just kind of interesting. I think marketing has been relegated to, or assigned themselves to, top of funnel for so long
Yep.
that, they need to start looking at what is this journey all the way through, what content works in different stages,
Exactly.
right? Because every time, if you think about it this way, every time a buyer engages with your content, they learn something new. So their context changes. They're no
Yeah.
longer the same. So it has to progress. It can't just
Yes.
be the same kind of content all the time, or they're never going to get anywhere. And so we have to start looking at, how do we, build these stories? How do we impact all the way across the buying process? Because that further down the funnel type of content is really what sales needs. And I would argue, as we go more digital, if sales, it's not that buyers don't want to talk to salespeople, it's that they're not finding enough value. So if we could actually enable our sellers to use content all the way through the process, they could probably get in front of buyers earlier in the process and be the driver of that momentum all the way
Go
through.
back to being the trusted. Go back to being the trusted advisor.
Yeah.
We were trusted advisors, and then we went through Mad Men in the 70s and 80s and 90s, where we were all dirty, nasty used car salespeople. And now it's, more than ever, to your point, with digital, we have to become that trusted advisor. The easiest way to do that, provide valuable content. That's not a sales pitch.
Yeah. But, and before we get to this question, the other thing I really wanted to say about understanding what content to create is, part of the beauty of a sales enablement platform is you can not only see what content sellers use, but you can see which content buyers engage with. And so that will show you what's working, what's engaging them, and what is just being ignored by both your sellers and your buyers, and help you start to refine how you choose, or what you choose to create content. So, it's, I think part of what I hear from marketers is they lose visibility when they pass a lead to sales. And so, you can get some of that back, so that you're not just relying on word of mouth feedback from sellers, but you can match that up to what actually happens, right?
Yeah, I love that. And Irv, I love this. You were reading my mind, because we use a tool called OneMob, which allows us to share content, of course, a little landing page, but it starts with a video. And then we can, to your point, Ardath, we can track, depending on how we set it up, we can track who looks at what and how long. And one of the big deals that we landed was because Kurt sent a OneMob, and we watched that OneMob travel throughout the entire buying committee. And we saw one person watched a video like 24 times. So it was like, okay, they have a good sense of who we are. And it was a combination of video, of resources. And yes, of course, there was there was a proposal in there too, but there was a lot of good content that was just a resource, that take it or lead it, right?
Right. And I really like that, because, one of the things I've heard over the past few years is video is everything. You got to have video,
Right.
period. Video. And I'm like, okay, wait, I talk to buyers to build personas. Some of them love video, some of them don't. So you have to have that combination, right? Of video, infographic, white paper, short articles, whatever the combination is that works for you and your buyers. But we have to think beyond format. I always hate it when a conversation leads off with, we need to create a video. Okay, what should we put in it? No, we need to communicate this message to our buyers. What's the best way to do it? Is the right order, right? So
yeah, Tom asked a good question. Thank you for popping that up, Andre. So yeah, there's working with education technology. It's a space with a lot of, I need to, oh gosh, I remember this. I need to get this to my manager. And then the manager needs to ask somebody, you know, the buying committee is extensive and usually government related too in many cases. So how do you move that information through the entire buying committee without losing its oomph? I like the way you put that, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah. That's a challenge that I encounter with a lot of clients and companies. And part of it is not having a really defined process for what's acceptable. And we get too many people involved in it, and everybody has an opinion. And for some reason, I'm not sure why this is true, but for some reason, everybody in your company thinks they're a marketer. They think they know how to market. But it's like, you know, we don't all think we're engineers. We don't all think we're the finance person. So that everybody thinks they know how to market, you know, and so there has to be a governance process over content and who gets the final word, you know, and I think that there needs to be some structure. And it's one of those things where some of the time I've been able to win this fight. Like, can we try it this way and prove through analytics what gets more engagement? Is it our, you know, cooks in the kitchen messed up content, or is it our really, you know, strategically designed content to match buyer personas and et cetera? And, you know, we're usually able to prove the fact. It's painful though. It really is.
How do you get those analytics? Like, how do you get those analytics? Because numbers don't lie.
Right. So, well, it depends on what you have to work with, you know, and which is one of the reasons why, you know, I like the sales enablement platform thing where you can get the analytics, because you can't get it really from Salesforce and that kind of thing. You can get it from your marketing automation platform. You can get it in a variety of different ways. One of the platforms that we're using at Modus that's making a big impact is 6 Sense. So intent data, right? Watching, you know, as we put a program into play, are we seeing our top account intent score grow, right? Is there more engagement? Are we getting more reach within an account, right? So instead of engaging one person, we're now engaging 4. And we can see that happen, you know, as the intent score increments. And so that's interesting too. But the other things are like surge data, like Zoom Info Reach is a new product. But so not just seeing what keywords are they searching for, because they could click on anything, but actually where do they dive in? Where are they spending time? What topics? You know, so you can help align with those things. And then you should be able to tie that to higher engagement, you know, deeper reach, you know, more momentum in the pipe, you know, more conversations that sales can get into. So there's a variety of ways you can measure it. Sometimes it's really hard to tie it to exact.
Right. You know, unfortunately, native platforms are not as good as they used to be for giving analytics. Like, you know, the analytics I get from LinkedIn, even when using ads, not that we use ads, you know, the analytics from your blog, the analytics, you almost have to use one or several third-party tools, you know, Seismic, Modus, Zoom Info, like you said, HubSpot, we use HubSpot. And it's really good if they play together too.
Right. Well, the integrations are key though. And so that's the thing you need to do. You can't keep jumping from system to system, trying to pull data and then try to mush it all together. I mean, spreadsheet hell, it's terrible. So we have to have that that lines it all up. You know I dig through all these systems every day, you know, and it's got to work together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We, you know, we by this point, because we use HubSpot for many different things, as you know, besides our CRM, but we won't integrate a tool, or we won't utilize a tool that doesn't integrate with HubSpot anymore, because we have to get that info plugged in to HubSpot so that we know the numbers, we know what's working and what's not working. And wishful thinking is not a good strategy.
Yeah, neither is hope. No. So I know, and it can be challenging, but it's rare these days that there isn't either a native integration or an
Yeah.
API that can be used to integrate
Yes.
systems, and we need to do that. Silos just slow us down, and
They
give
really,
us
really
wrong
do.
information. If you're working on data from one silo that doesn't know what this silo has, you could
Yeah.
be totally off the mark, right?
Yeah. And by the way, companies need to integrate too. Marketing needs to talk to sales, needs to talk to customer success, needs to talk to operations, right?
Yeah, and that's
Those
why
can't be siloed either.
No, I know. And that's why we've spent a lot of time in this last quarter talking about this idea of revenue enablement, RevOps, right? Looking at
Yeah.
sales enablement as a way to connect marketing, sales, and service so that
Yep.
you've got this whole, customer life cycle covered so that you can address it, so that you can see that, there's always been this myth of the 360-degree customer view. Well, we've got to make it reality if we're going to, continue to engage our buyers. And especially when you look at the new business model like subscription, we
Yes.
can't just be reselling every month. We've got to build these relationships up for the long term.
And build them for the long term. I mean, that's another thing we've been doing at Vengreso. We've gone to one-off to subscription based, but yeah, you got to keep providing value. And what provides value? Good content.
Exactly.
Go figure. So we're at time. I lost track of time because I just find this such a fascinating topic. Do you folks, if you've got any last minute questions, pop them into the chat and Andre will get them over. And while we're waiting for any last minute questions, do you have anything, Ardath, additionally that you want to share? We've got her website down below. Make sure to pop over there. There's a ton of good information. Your books are still super relevant. Even the one I read like 11 years, unlike my book, which is completely irrelevant now. Yours is still relevant, even though it's like 11, 12 years old.
What's funny is my first book that actually came out in 2009 outsold my newer book that came out in 2015 for quite some time, just a couple of years ago, because people finally caught up. So I figured I'd be dead by the time they catch up to the other one, but I'm going to write a third one anyway. But one of the things I wanted to get out about internal content is that just like we need different forms of content to educate our buyers, we need to think about different forms of content for our sellers. So one of the things that I think can really make an impact is micro learning or just-in-time learning.
Yes.
So you could, 2 minutes on a video that says, here's a quick overview of the industry and what the biggest problems, people are in this industry are facing. Here's a quick overview of, a competitor that you may need to talk about position us against or whatever. But these short snippet of things that buyer or sellers can engage with right before they go into a meeting, or for continuous learning. And so I think what we're seeing at Modus is a lot of companies are coming to us saying, okay, given all the remote stuff, our LMS are now ineffective. They're just overloaded, bloated, too big of trainings. We need shorter, bite-sized pieces that people will engage with. And just-in-time learning is a way to do that, sharing internal content. You can even use it for battle cards or SWOT analysis or other things like that. But those are the kinds of things. And I create personas for a living, basically. But the type of persona you use to really inform strategic content development is not the persona to give to a sales rep. Create a specific persona for sales that includes the things that they can use. Right. Yes. So if you build personas correctly, you've got a boatload of information over here that marketers are using for content development. Sellers need a one sheet that summarizes exactly the things they can use with a specific persona. So, one size does not fit all.
Yeah, no, that is, it's so, I could keep going on and on and on. One of my pet peeves is when the buyer persona for marketing doesn't match the buyer persona for sales.
That's one of
Have you ever, I'm guessing you've come across that before.
But what I love are the templated personas.
Yes.
Where I'll ask a client, well, do you have personas? Oh, yes, we do. And they send them to me and I'm looking at them and I can even see where whatever agency created them didn't change some of the basic
Right.
template messaging, right? So it's the same on different personas, that no way would it be the same, and just not deep enough to be helpful. And so it's personas are not as easy as everybody thinks they are. So
I know. I know. Everyone's like, oh, it's Joe Smith with an Joe Smith went to Harvard and is now CIO. No.
Has 2 kids and a dog and drives a Volvo. Who cares?
Yeah.
What do you do with that? Seriously.
Exactly. Okay, we have to have you back on and talk about personas, because I think it's an assumption that people and companies have that, yeah, we got those nailed, and they don't. So
thing is, they don't know how to use them.
No,
you can't just create them, check the box, put them in a drawer and say, okay, we did that,
Yeah, we have to have you back on, because that's a whole other conversation that we could dive into right now, but we're not going to. So we're going to have you back on. And I noticed my friend Kate, who also has a LinkedIn Live, you might want to get together with Kate and get on her show as well, because I think what you have to share is so important. So I'm going to wait until our next. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like Adam's point right there. Just in time is better than just in case.
Yeah.
No kidding. Why do you need to learn just in case? When is it, if it doesn't happen, what's the point? So yeah. Exactly.
You got to connect with Adam too. He's a rock star. Speaking of rock stars, next week we have David Meerman Scott. I am also a fangirl of DM Scott, have been since he was at DM Scott at Twitter since like 2007. So I'm going to be super excited. Go ahead.
I have a funny story about that. When his first book came out way back, when was it, like in the 90s or something? I'm the first person ever to write a review about it on my blog. I was his first fangirl. I just want
Oh my gosh. Okay, we can duke it out for fangirls. You know what we should do is have all the 3 of us on at some point. We'll have the 3 of us. Awesome. Any last words of advice? Anything else you want to say? And then we'll sign off.
No, just marketing and sales need to be BFFs as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so I just think there's so much we can do together better than we can do apart.
I got to put up. So Susan wants another one. Jen, I love you, Jen. We don't use personas because we can work with anyone. Oy, oy, oy.
That's right.
Right?
Oh yeah, I know. The failure to put a stake in the ground.
Man. Thank you, Deb. Oh, Deb's another one. You should be on her live too. So, okay. I got you booked for the next 3 lives. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your engagement. Thanks for being on today's show. Thank you so much, Ardath. I'm going to be coming once we can visit again. I will be down there visiting you and Rebel in California. And
yay.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.